Everyone cheers. That's thankful. That's good to be thankful for.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for coming to the last TAC meeting of the year. My name is Sarah Grant, and I represent the City and County of Broomfield. And today is my last meeting serving as chair of the DRCOG Transportation Advisory Committee. I call the meeting to order of December 15th, 2025 at 1:31 p.m. Thanks for everyone for being on time today. This is an in-person and live stream meeting format. Members of the public attending by Zoom have the ability to mute and unmute themselves and share their webcam. For those attending online, please make sure that you have your typed name and it reflects your first and last name and your representation. We ask that those intending to speak, please use the raise hand button to ask a question or comment. If you have a technical question, you can direct them to staff in the chat box. As a reminder to members and alternates here in person, please press the unmute button on the bottom of your mic stand and make sure your light on the microphone is on and you're prepared to speak and speak directly into the microphone. Please announce your name and representation when asking a question or making a comment for the record. During the business agenda, TAC members and alternates can speak or ask questions, and members of the public may speak during public comment. DRCOG is sending around the sign-in sheet. Please do sign in. And at this time, Transportation Advisory Committee members and alternates will introduce themselves here in person. And I'll start with Carson.
Carson Priest, TDM Special Interest Seat.
Brody Ayers, Aviation Special Interest Seat.
Christina Lane, Jefferson County.
Brent Soderlund, City of Littleton, Arapahoe County.
Jim Kotz, Arapahoe County.
Ellie Van Bruggen, City of Arvada.
Matt Callison, Arapahoe County, City of Aurora.
Tim Mormon, Adams County, City of Thornton.
Chris Chauvin, City of Westminster, Adams County.
Michelle Riccio, Adams County, Adams County.
Jeff Boyd, Housing Special Interest.
Angie Rivera, Malpieti, Equity Special Interest Seat.
Sam Kennedy, DRCOG staff.
Sarah Grant, City and County of Broomfield.
Jacob Rieger, DRCOG staff.
Frank Bruno, non-RTD Transit.
Rocky McSalco, Jefferson County, City of Wheat Ridge. Jim Houston, CDOT Region 4 in Greeley.
Miguel Aguilar, Southwest Weld County.
Justin Schmidt, City of Lone Tree, Douglas County.
Zeke Lynch, Douglas County, Douglas County. Tom Rides, Douglas County, Castle Rock.
Chris Hudson, Town of Parker, Douglas County.
Gene Sampson, City of Boulder.
Alex Hydrate, Boulder County.
Michelle Malinakis, City of Lafayette.
Carolyn Clam, DRCOG staff.
Justin Begley, City County of Denver.
David Gasper, City and County of Denver.
David Krutzinger, City and County of Denver.
Jessica
Mickelbus, Colorado Department of Transportation, Region 1.
Hillary Simmons, Older Adult Special Interest.
Great, thank you. Is that everybody? Wonderful. I'll hand it over to Jacob. I believe we have one announcement of changes to our alternates.
Thank you, Chair Grant. Yes, we do have one new alternate from the Adams County contingent, Eden Teklamariam. I hope I was very close. From the City of North Glen as a new alternate. So welcome, Eden.
Welcome, Eden. Okay. We'll move on to public comment. As we open up the record for public comment, DRCOG has noted that so far we've received 18 comments as of Thursday, December 11th at 5 p.m. about the action item for the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan action item. And the TAC would like to let the public know that those comments were received by 5 p.m., were shared with the TAC members and alternates for review. There have been some additional comments as well since then, and those will be shared around as a part of the public record. Please be assured that any statement provided to DRCOG is included in the public comment record. If someone has submitted a written statement, it is part of the record and is not required to be read into the record. After TAC concludes, DRCOG will post all written comments as well as any subsequent public comments we've received via the website, email, or in person on today's meeting event page on the DRCOG website. The public will be able to view those online at drcog.org/calendar. Please note that the public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 45 minutes total for this item. If there are additional comments beyond 45 minutes, those comments will be taken at the end of the meeting. We will now open up the meeting for public comment. If you've joined by Zoom, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button, and we'll call on you to begin speaking. If you have joined by phone, please raise your virtual hand by pressing *9, and we'll call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Staff will unmute you, and then you'll need to unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, after which we will ask you to wrap up. And as a reminder, after public comment, only Transportation Advisory Committee members and alternates will be able to partake in the discussion regarding each agenda item. We'll take public comment. Do we have anybody here in person today? Seeing none, do we have any online? Again, please raise your virtual hand. And if you join by phone, you can raise your virtual hand by pressing *9.
Okay, we have one hand raised, Elizabeth, if you have been unmuted, so if you're able to, you have 3 minutes to make a public comment. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm very new to this. I don't have a lot to say. I just want to say that I find that highway widening is not really in support of the transportation system of the future that I think we want to see in Denver and surrounding areas. And so I would like to see more emphasis given and support for alternate transportation methods and less towards car widening. So more for travel by foot, car, bus, bicycle, and other mobility devices, trains, versus widening of highways. So that's the only thing I wanted to emphasize regarding this.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your public comment. Would you like to enter your last name for public comment?
Sure, Simons, S-I-M-O-N-S.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any further public comment online?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I will give it a second, and then Elizabeth, I'm just going to lower your hand. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, there's no more public hands raised at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for public comment, and now the public comment period is now closed. DRCOG TAC appreciates your time and your comments today. At this time, we'll move on to the October 27th, 2025 Transportation Advisory Committee meeting summary. This is attachment A in your packet. Is there any discussion, corrections, or questions about the last meeting? Seeing none, the meeting summary shall stand. Thank you. We'll move on to our action items today. We have several. The first we have is item number 4 in your packet. This is the election of the Transportation Advisory Committee Chair and Vice Chair, attachment B in your packet, and I'll hand it over to Jacob Rieger.
All right, thank you, Chair Grant. So per our DRCOG committee guidelines for the Transportation Advisory Committee, we do elect a new chair and vice chair every 2 years. And so it has come time to do that again. Before I go further in this item, though, I do want to first start by expressing my personal gratitude, and I think the committee's gratitude to Sarah Grant for being our chair for, I believe, the last 2.5 years. So Sarah actually took over when Steve Durian, after he was elected chair about 3 years ago. He served, I think, about half his term before he switched positions, came off of TAC, so we needed to do an interim election. Sarah became chair, finished out Steve's term, and then did her complete term. So, Sarah, you've just been an absolutely amazing and wonderful chair these past 2.5 years, and we very much appreciate your service. I also clarified to Sarah that once we conclude this item and elect a new chair and vice chair, she does have to finish running this meeting. She can't go sit in the audience until January, so we still have Sarah for the rest of this meeting. But we do need to elect a chair and vice chair. So if you'll recall, we canceled November tax. So at our last meeting, which was in October, we did form a nominating panel. And I would like to thank Brody Ayers, Frank Bruno, Sarah, of course, Jessica Mickelbus, and Jean Sanson, who are the folks who volunteered to be in our nominating panel to sort of maybe solicit, but at least vet candidate applications. The panel did receive 2 applications, 1 for each position. Apparently, we're going to have a takeover of this committee by the Justins. Justin Schmitz put his hat in the ring to serve for chair for the next term, and Justin Begley put in his name to serve as vice chair. So that is the slate of candidates that the nominating panel is recommending. We can take nominations from the floor, so if someone does want to nominate themselves or somebody else, you can do that. But again, the 2 Justins are the slate that the nominating panel is recommending for chair and vice chair. Current Chair Grant, I will turn that back to you for discussion and motion.
Well, thank you, Jacob. Thank you for that overview. And we will take a motion for chair and vice chair for the next 2026 to 2027. I'm sorry, apologies. We'll take if there's any further nominations from the floor. Okay, seeing none. Is there a motion for chair and vice chair? Chair Justin Schmitz, City of Lone Tree, and vice chair Justin Begley, City and County of Denver. Kent Mormon?
Kent Mormon, City of Thornton. So moved.
Kent? Is there a second? Mac McAllison, thank you for the second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously, and congratulations, Justin and Justin, for the next term. Thank you. We'll move on to our next action item. This is the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan Update, Recommended Investment Priorities, Attachment C in your packet. And I'll hand it over to Alvin Bedell Sanchez, Regional Transportation Planning Program Manager.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So a pretty critical moment for the Regional Transportation Plan. So want to highlight the steps that's taken to get to this recommended list that's been included in the meeting packet. Also want to thank all the members of the public who have provided comment, both in person, virtually here at the meeting, but also all those written. Like noted, those are in the record, and we appreciate you taking time to provide comment on a pretty critical moment for us, and not just during our official public review period that will occur next summer. So I'll step us through a number of the steps that we've taken to provide this recommended list before you. I'll start off with a reminder of where we were with our call for projects when that closed. We did have 133 candidate submittals, and so the bulk were from our county transportation forums or our counties, but we also had submittals from CDOT Region 1, Region 4. A new piece this cycle was submittals from DRCOG staff, and we also had RTD submit projects as well. All of those projects were evaluated using the same criteria and were brought before both the regional partners and the regional review panels. So all the projects from all the partners were evaluated together. It was not a separate process for projects from the regional partners, projects from our local member governments. When we looked at all of the projects we received, if we broke them down by their primary investment that was being proposed in those submittals, almost 38% of those submittals focused on roadway improvements. Now, this was not just roadway widening or new road projects. These were also projects that reconfigured some of those roadways. But you can see that we also had a number of project submittals related to active transportation, operational and safety, transit, bridge improvements, and interchanges. But like we often see through our own process, as you submit projects with the TIP, as you go through other discretionary grants that are available to you, we know all of these projects are not just one primary type. And so we also took into account what we received in those submittals, what other work were you doing alongside that primary improvement that was provided. And so the bulk of the projects that we received through our call for projects are also improving other facility types around that project, including active transportation, operational safety. And so as you'll often hear us say, all of our projects often do a lot of good work in the region. We're not just doing one particular project type here in the Denver region. If you added up all of our submittals that we received through our call for projects, that was about $11.4 billion of ask for the next 30 years. We estimate at this point that we have about $7.8 billion to actually put into the regional transportation plan for individually listed projects in the plan. And so we needed to whittle that down. And so we've established a framework that we'll go through to get to this recommended list and be able to fit our most priority projects into the fiscally constrained regional transportation plan. As you often hear, our RTP is not a wish list, so we cannot fit all of those projects, unfortunately. We've seen a version of this chart. We'll finally be bringing both different arms of that together, the financial planning work that we've been doing the last few months with our regional partners, CDOT and RTD, highlighting the evaluation process we took with our regional partners, with the regional review panel that has gotten us to this draft list that is before you for recommendation. I'll start on the evaluation side. I'm going to highlight two pieces that we did. First is our regional partner check-ins. Almost as soon as the call for projects closed, planning staff from CDOT Regions 1, Regions 4, RTD, and DRCOG were meeting weekly, and those continued through early December, working through all of the projects that we received in the call, as well as checking the status of all of those projects that we committed to carrying forward in the next 2050 RTP. So those were regional check-in, weekly check-ins with our partners. And then we also had regional review panel meetings. So this panel met 3 times after the call for projects closed in early November. They also got to see all of the different data points that the regional partners were evaluating when it came to the project submittals. So those also included the congestion scores, the equity index scores. We asked other considerations that should be thought of as the recommended list was being developed. Delving a little deeper into both, for the regional review panel, we really wanted to make sure that we were hearing forum perspectives. So this included a representative from each of our 10 counties in the Denver region. And so we were able to receive representatives from all of our counties in those virtual settings. We wanted to hear about the forum's own experiences during the call for projects. A few of them did use our own criteria to help vet projects to be submitted for inclusion in the call. And so we wanted to see if there were other considerations that they also took into account that might need to be or should be considered at the regional level. Provide additional feedback. So in addition to the call for projects, the project list, there are also other components that make up our regional transportation plan. What other priorities should we be looking at? What other components in the plan should we focus on? So we wanted to make sure we were hearing those priorities as well. And then reviewing draft recommendations. So a number of versions of the recommended list were provided to the regional review panel in those meetings with tweaks between them and since the last meeting occurred, but they did also get to see the draft recommendations as they stood at that time. When it came to the regional partner check-ins, like I mentioned, they reviewed all of the submittals that we received, all 133. We worked through them to see how a potential project concept might impact their own facilities, their own service that's being provided on the ground. We also workshopped and drafted recommendations. So as we looked to create that recommended list of fiscally constrained projects, what was most appropriate to include when, how might it balance other priorities at their own regional level, and then to that last point, aligning those draft recommendations. There's a lot of planning work that always occurs in the Denver region. There are some key points occurring this year. So where would it be possible to make sure we're sharing the same message on particular project priorities through both planning processes or all planning processes? I'm going to move us over to the other arm of that chart, which was the financial plan side. So when it comes to our financial plan or our fiscally constrained RTP, as you'll hear us call it, we look at the revenue that we believe is available from the 3 regional partners, primarily as they're the ones that will work through our process to allocate dollars to projects in the region. Those are CDOT, RTD, and DRCOG. As in previous cycle, the Regional Transportation District is the bulk of the revenue that is being spent on transportation in the Denver region, almost 2/3 of funding that's available, but DRCOG and CDOT do also allocate dollars through their own processes. Beyond just knowing how much revenue we think is available out to 2050, you'll also hear us often talk about projects versus programs. And so that's different for each of the regional partners, depending on where they are in their own planning process, how they allocate dollars through their own processes. So for each of these, we've broken out the revenue for each of the three partners into whether it's available for a project in the regional transportation plan, a line on a map, a row in a spreadsheet, or whether it's already called for in some way. So it's going to go to future calls for projects. Think of CDOT's HSIP process that's about to be underway, or it's going to small types of projects that we wouldn't list in the regional transportation plan. So transit operations, we're going to have buses out to 2050. Those are going to run. Those are going to be replaced. We're not going to list all of those, but we know that RTD is going to do that work. And so that's where those programs come into place. So for each of our regional partners, we determine collaboratively how that revenue can be split between projects versus programs. As DRCOG has the most leeway with funds that are being administered through our process, you'll see our portion of the pie is three quarters what we would call projects in the regional transportation plan. So bringing together the revenue that we think is available, what's actually available for projects, and everything we've heard through our review process, the different information that we had available, we developed this framework to identify the recommended priorities that are in the meeting packet. If you'll recall, we did commit to carrying forward a number of projects that are already in construction, will be in construction, or are in NEPA. And so we updated those projects first. We did receive some requests to change the scope, change the cost, maybe change the staging period for those projects. So we updated those first, made sure we were still carrying forward those appropriately in the next regional transportation plan. After that, we gave priority to resubmitted projects. So if there's a project already in our regional transportation plan and an applicant resubmitted it for it to stay in the regional transportation plan, we gave that project, that concept, the next priority. Following that, we looked at the qualitative scores that were provided to the panel and that were completed by DRCOG staff. Those used the 6 RTP priorities and 3 MetroVision themes to evaluate projects across a scale of high, medium, low. Using those qualitative scores, you'll always hear us say that scores aren't the end-all, be-all for us in our planning process, so it is just one piece of information. Using those qualitative scores, we also looked at scores related to congestion that came out of our travel model, any project that might have had a high congestion score out to 2050. A high equity index score, so leveraging our existing equity index we have here at DRCOG and doing a proximity analysis. Were there projects that scored high in terms of being near highly marginalized communities? And then geographic balance, you'll hear that term used sometimes differently across the agency. Here we're really talking about through this process new applicants. So there are some new projects in the regional transportation plan from applicants that we haven't historically included in the regional transportation plan that we're looking to include since they did go through that call for projects process and their priorities aren't always included in the RTP as explicitly as a line on the map or row in the spreadsheet. Where appropriate, we did combine some supportive projects. An example would be Sheridan. We did receive multiple concepts on Sheridan, so we felt it was appropriate to combine both of those submittals into one project. There are other projects that you see remain individually listed. So Alameda, there are a number of projects on Alameda that are shown in the list. That might be due to staging period asks from the applicants, what we think is feasible over the next 30 years. But then there's also a number of projects proposed on Tower Road. And so not every project conceivably can have some efficiencies through a combination. So you'll still see both separate projects on some corridors as well. And then where possible, we also funded some projects programmatically. So going back to that pie chart, if a project was not really significant, maybe was below a certain threshold, we checked to see if we could include that project as a program in our regional transportation plan. Looking at the recommended projects, yes. So looking at the funding for the next regional transportation plan as proposed, a third of funding that we think is available out to 2050 was already captured by projects we committed to carrying forward into the next plan. So that left about 2/3 of funding we think is available. We prioritize projects that are already in the plan that were proposed to be, that were resubmitted to be proposed to stay in the plan. Over half of funding goes to projects that are already in the plan that folk would like to continue to see in the RTP. And so 14% of funding is going to new projects. So in the meeting materials that were provided, the table should show projects in red. Those are new projects that are not currently in the Regional Transportation Planner that are proposed to be included in the next RTP update. And so looking at the funding breakdown, you often heard us say through this planning process, hopefully we got it pretty right over the last 3 years when we first made the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, but we did want to include some new projects in this process, and where appropriate, using different funding strategies, we're able to get about 14% of that to be new projects. Providing a broken down summary of projects and programs by partners, by project type. This is our recommended investment strategy for the next RTP. For both CDOT and RTD, we do break out their investment strategy into projects versus programs. Remember, a project is that which is individually listed in the plan, a row on a spreadsheet, a line on a map, and programmatic are enhancements, improvements, projects we know will occur but that are too small to include, that are still too far out there, that need to go through their own process. I'll draw the attention to the project types that are the final 4 bullet points on this slide. We did maintain our active transportation, safety, and freight priorities as from the current RTP. In the final bullet point, you're seeing that just there is one regional transit project and program line item now. So currently in the current RTP, we have what we've called corridor transit planning and regional BRT planning. We wanted to talk about our transit priorities as one bucket here at the region. What are our transit priorities across the region out to 2050? And so that's one change from the current structure that you might be familiar with through our RTP. But through all of this, you can see that there are projects and programs that cover multiple project types. When we talk about active transportation, those truly are just bicycle pedestrian facilities. Those are just trails occurring in the region. That's their primary improvement. Same with safety projects. Those are primarily operational safety projects, not associated with other motor vehicle capacity improvements along those corridors. When we talk about freight, we're really looking at overpasses, underpasses, bridge reconstructions, projects that we don't need to include in the plan from a regional air quality perspective, but that we know are priorities to our member governments. And then the other side of our plan is our locally funded projects. So we've been in a process since, I believe, over the summer, working with individual applicants who have projects listed in the locally funded side of the Regional Transportation Plan, updating those based on modifications that have been requested. We've also been working with our Public Highway Authority partners. So we've had conversations with E470, Jefferson Parkway, and Northwest Parkway to make sure we're showing their improvements, their projects, their priorities appropriately in the RTP as well. And then the meeting packet materials at the very bottom of that spreadsheet do include a table that's vision projects. Any vision project on that table can be shown as a locally funded project, if appropriate, if we're able to see a reasonable assumption of funds. So if you do see a project in the vision side of that meeting packet, we'll be working with project applicants to see if there's capacity for that to be shown on the locally funded side. So it still is included in the RTP, but it's not expected to use DRCOG, CDOT, or RTD funding for completion. Looking ahead, beyond this meeting, we do expect to be before RTC tomorrow and the board on Wednesday, providing informational briefings on the similar process that I've just outlined with you this afternoon. We'll be seeking approval at the January 20th RTC meeting and approval from the board on January 21st, assuming we get a positive approval recommendation from this body this afternoon as well. That concludes my presentation, Chair. There is a recommendation for consideration before you, but I'll turn it over to you for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin, for that thorough overview. Are there any questions or comments from the DRCOG TAC? And Orman.
Alvin, on page 2 of your list, you've got I-25, 84th to 104th. I would recommend that we move that to the 2025 to 2029 instead of 2040. It's been promised to our elected officials to start construction in 27 if funding's available.
Thank you for that. That also brings to mind oversight on my end. That is one project that we received information after the meeting packet went out, so that will be updated for a closer staging period, and the cost will be revised as well. In addition to that project, we do have new information from RTE related to their long-range financial plan, so that will change numbers in our financial plan, but should not impact the fiscally constrained list of recommended projects, since their funding primarily goes to programs, so projects we don't need to list in the plan. And then related to that, the light rail level boarding work is expected to cost $1.8 billion, not $1 billion, as is currently shown in the list of recommended projects. And you'll see a discrepancy in a project that's listed both on the vision list and the DRCOG administered list, the I-70 Colorado 79 interchange. It is our intention that that is included in the fiscally constrained side of the plan under DRCOG administered, so it should not be shown on the vision list.
Other questions or comments? Angie Rivera-Malpiedi.
Thank you. Alvin, thank you for the presentation. You know, in light of all the public comments that I was reading, can you talk a little bit more about the plan for active transportation?
Yep. So similar to the current plan that we have, we did a specific ask for major projects that are active transportation, so not just our motor vehicle capacity or transit projects that we're required to have. We really left it up to the county forums to identify what those priorities were that were most appropriate for their locations. So some might lean more like regional trails that are connecting communities that aren't currently connected, or they might be bicycle pedestrian facilities along particular corridors in particular communities. But those projects are intended to be primarily bicycle pedestrian improvements that aren't tied to other capacity improvements in the plan. There is also $800 million, I believe we're showing in the active transportation side of the project program list. So those, we want to show some commitment to those types of projects, but since they're not required to be included as specifically as others in the plan, it's a way of showing that investment out to the next 30 years for those project types, but leaving it a little more flexible and open for the planning process to identify what those could be.
Something to add, Jacob?
Thank you, Chair Grant. Yeah, just wanted to supplement Alvin's excellent answer, kind of 3 additional points. Alvin just hit on one of them that do understand, as he said in his presentation, this is about the major list of projects that we individually identify in the plan. But remember that in our financial plan, in the fiscally constrained plan, we will have literally billions of dollars, because remember, we're looking at total revenues, federal, state, local, regardless of those revenues come from, billions of dollars that we're not showing yet as specific projects, but do include things like active transportation, safety, sidewalks, local bus service, maintenance, intersection operator, like all those things. We don't show those as individual projects, but they are part and parcel of our fiscally constrained plan. Secondly, is that even the projects that we do show in this list in the attachment, these roadway projects are assumed to be sort of multimodal complete streets type projects to the extent that that's feasible, given that we do have a very diverse region. A complete streets project in Douglas County is going to look a little different than it does in the city of Denver. But, the assumption is that where feasible, these projects are including sidewalks, they are including bike paths, they are including accommodations for transit. So we're building that into the plan. And then finally, specific to active transportation, you all in October gave a recommendation for approval for our updated active transportation plan that we've been working on. Hopefully our board will approve that plan on Wednesday night. That is also part of our 2050 RTP ecosystem, and will set our North Star going forward for implementing active transportation investments in the region. Thank you.
David Kretzinger.
David Kretzinger, City and County of Denver. Alvin, thanks for the presentation and thanks for all the hard work. A quick question about freight. How were truck, rail, and aviation freight interests considered so far, and what's the avenue for those private corporations essentially to provide input going forward?
So through the RTP process, we really leaned on the priorities we were hearing from our locals for those projects that you're seeing in the recommended list. But we are undergoing a separate process from the RTP, which is related to our updated multimodal regional freight plan. So we're engaging with those stakeholders directly through that process. Where feasible, we hope to include some of those priorities, network tiers, anything that might be available by the time the RTP comes for adoption through the freight work that's occurring right now. So separate through the freight plan, but we do include investments on the recommended list that are focused on bridge improvements, overpasses, underpasses, and often the project types that are highlighted in our freight plan are those that don't need to be included in the RTP as specifically as some of our motor vehicle capacity or transit capacity projects, so they do still remain eligible even if they're not specifically listed in the plan.
Dean Skansen. Alvin, thank you. This is a lot of work, so appreciated. I have a specific question about the staging period for projects. I'm looking at one project in particular, and it's a regional transit project, and it's in the staging period for 2035-39. So, for example, if there was an early stage project earlier than 2035 that would include changes to capacity for transit, is that something that would have to be spelled out in this list, or is that something that you build into your air quality modeling for this list of projects?
It could be both, depending on the length of that capacity change. So for any motor vehicle capacity change or transit capacity change that's over a mile, we would want to see that separately, especially if it spans staging periods. So we would want to know that detail to show both on the list of plans, but also to provide for our travel modelers to do that air quality and GHG planning work. There are some projects that might exist in one staging period where we know we're doing capacity improvements and operational improvements and service improvements, and we'll just keep that in one. But if it does span a staging period and we know it's over a mile, it would be good to know so we can reflect it appropriately.
Okay, is that a recommendation I should make now or hold?
You can make that as through the recommendation process to revise and explore that project for the recommendation moving forward to RTC and board.
Okay, so for the record, I'd like to make the recommendation that, the US Route 36, 28th Street and Colorado 93 Broadway project be at least partially moved up to the 2030 to 35 staging period for an early stage signing and restriping project.
Thank you. For folk who might wonder what that looks like, at the beginning of that meeting packet attachment, under completed projects, you will see that there is a CO7 project that's $150,000 for restriping. We did need to include that separately because it was a capacity change over a mile, even though it was only restriping. So that's an example of where you might see projects that are split across staging periods that impact capacity that we need to reflect separately despite the cost of that project.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Grant. Actually, a question to Gene Sanson and to Alvin. Gino, just to make sure I understand, you're asking that that project be advanced a staging period to be shown one staging period earlier than we're currently showing it.
To clarify, it was submitted by CDOT, and it is a much larger project in the range of $16 million, but just like the project you were just referring to, Alvin, the 100 and something thousand signing and striping transit project, we, the City of Boulder, would fund, hopefully co-fund with CDOT, a much smaller, in the range of 500,000 or less, transit signing and striping project from somewhere between 2030 and 35.
Okay, but the larger project envisioned would be in the same, would stay in the same staging period. What I'm hearing is that you might do a piece of it sooner.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Go ahead, Justin Begley.
Thank you. I didn't know if this is the place and time to talk about staging periods. I only have one comment on that front, but at the time we were developing our list, we also had a general obligation bond that was going out, which had a package of projects, so it was complex for us. to know, does it get funded? Do these projects move forward? Do they not? We do have a project that's in an earlier staging period that's valued about the same as a project we have at a later staging period, that we do think those staging periods would be better off being swapped. Like me to tell you, or should I send a note or something?
Yes, we would like you to tell us.
I don't want to drag us down a rabbit hole of details, but we would need to move the Welton Street corridor project from the 2035 staging period forward to something sooner. And I see the 38th Avenue multimodal, which did end up getting bond funding. It's likely any additional work on that would be pushed out from that locally funded project. I can pull that staging period up, but I know it's sooner than 2035.
Could you just repeat the second project, Justin?
Yeah, it's the 38th Avenue multimodal. It's under the discrete multimodal projects. Shared into Fox multimodal improvements 2030 to 34.
Okay, yep, we currently show that in the early 30s.
Actually 60 million. I thought it was less. Sorry for the curveball, but that's probably, that should be pushed out, and the Welton one would need to be moved into an earlier staging period. Thank you.
I want to thank the DRCOG, CDOT, RTD, all the partners here. A lot of work has gone into this year to develop this list through your forums, your technical groups, and your elected officials to get us to this point. So I really appreciate all of the work that has gone in to build this list to prepare for the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Justin Schmitz.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move to recommend to the Regional Transportation Committee adoption of the recommended investment priorities for the 2050 MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan.
Justin? Kent Moorman?
I'll second it and then ask, can we have a friendly amendment to recommend what has been recommended here today?
I like that idea, yes.
For discussion, I believe that there were a few comments today. Will DRCOG be taking those into consideration for the next update? Yes. So all the comments today will be taken into consideration for the next update to this list. Second by Kent Moorman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Alvin, and thank you, DRCOG, and thank you, everyone here today.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next action item, item number 6. This is the Transportation Improvement Program Policy Amendments. This is attachment D in your packet. It's being presented by Josh Schwenk, Senior Planner, DRCOG.
All right, thank you, Chair. I do have a much shorter project list for your consideration this afternoon. We just have one proposed amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program. It's to the US 6 and Wadsworth Interchange Reconstruction Project. This project has been awarded additional federal and state funds, including $20 million in a federal raised discretionary grant, $36.4 million in state legislative funding, $14.7 million in state RPP funding, and $6 million in state FASTER funding. So happy to take any questions committee members might have about this. Otherwise, I do have a recommended motion available for you here in your packet.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions or comments from the DRCOG staff? Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Grant. I just want to thank all the project partners in CDOT. This project has been in our 2050 RTP for a very long time. It's been one of those projects that's sort of just, you know, it's been there and it's important, hard to move forward. It's so good to see this moving forward. Really excited, so thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
Speaker Lakewood Jeffco. I'd like to move to recommend to the RTC the attached project amendments to the 2629 tip.
Thank you, Mike. Second. Second by Chris Chauvin. And any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Great, passes unanimously, and congratulations on the RAISE grant. Next item, item number 7. This is fiscal year 2025 Transportation Improvement Program, first year delays, attachment E, your packet, and we'll hand it over to Brad Williams, planner with DRCOG.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brad Williams, planner with DRCOG, and today we'll be going over the FY25 first year TIP project delays. Our current TIP policy outlines the expectations for initiation of project phases, including how to address delays if they happen. These delays, regardless of the reason, tie up the limited funding for DRCOG to allocate. At the end of federal fiscal year 25 in late September, DRCOG asked CDOT and RTD to review the statuses that we've collected from sponsors throughout the year for projects with FY25 funding. After confirming these project statuses, DRCOG staff contacted the sponsors with phases that were not initiated by the September 2025 deadline. This was to find out the reason for their delay, to discover the current status of the project, and to assist them in a plan to initiate that phase. To avoid a second year delay, all sponsors identified in this report must initiate their delayed phase by July 1st, 2026. There are 25 first year delayed projects in this report, of which 2 have already been initiated since we collected this information. That would be the Wheat Ridge and Lone Tree projects. Compared to last year, we have about the same amount of projects, which indicates we seem to be settling into a more constant state, typical of what we'd see, kind of recovering from the long-term COVID issues and our most recent call for projects. As for the why, we see a very spread out list of reasons for these delays. Compared to the last couple of years, we saw 1 or 2 reasons tend to dominate it, which indicates to us that as a region, these TIP projects are much healthier compared to the last couple of years. We have a motion for recommendation here at the bottom, but first and foremost, I'd like to thank many people in this room for helping us have a better understanding of where we're at with these TIP projects, and for your participation each month in sending us these valuable updates. Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions if we have any.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions or comments? I want to say I want to appreciate DRCOG for reaching out to us to keep us on track and being a resource to make sure that we keep all of our regional projects on track for implementation. I think it's been really helpful, and I hope that it's also been helpful for your staff, for your organization. Do we have a motion or any further questions or comments? Mormon.
Kim Mormon, Adams County, City of Thornton. I move to approve the staff recommendation to continue each of the projects listed.
Thank you, Kent. Is there a second? Angie Rivera Malpay makes a second. And any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to our final action item for today. This is item number 8 in your packet. 2026 Federal Safety Targets. This is attachment F in your packet, and this will be presented by Carolyn Clam, planner for DRCOG.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carolyn Clam. I'm planner with DRCOG, and as you just described, I'll be presenting on our 2026 federal safety targets. So as a quick review, there are several main federal performance areas, and the one I'll be talking about today is this PM1, safety performance. Some of those targets come from the Federal Highway Administration and some from the Federal Transit Administration, but like I said, the one we'll be discussing today is just PM1. So a quick overview of the pieces that go into the safety performance. The area we include is public roads in the DRCOG MPO region, so that's a slightly different boundary than our overall planning boundary. The data that we use for it is provided by CDOT, and then DRCOG geolocates off-system data. The performance measures we use are these 5 here. 3 of them are just numeric-based safety performance measures, and 2 of them are rate-based by VMT, or vehicle miles traveled. So the numeric ones are number of fatalities, number of serious injuries, and number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And then we also look at the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled and the rate of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. And that data, the VMT data, comes from our travel model. The calculation is a 5-year rolling average, and that'll make a little bit more sense when I get a graph and picture up here, but I'll make sure I point that out. But it is a 5-year rolling average, and the guidance from the federal government is that our targets need to be, realistic and achievable, and that DRCOG can set our own targets or support CDOT state targets, and we choose at DRCOG to set our own targets. The penalty for not meeting these targets is that there's no real financial penalty or funding restriction, but there is additional scrutiny if we do not meet our targets. So to get into the methodology of how DRCOG chooses our safety targets, we sort of have these 3 main principles here. So the first is that, since we have adopted a taking action on Regional Vision Zero, we've decided as an agency loss of life is not an acceptable price to pay for mobility. So we are aiming towards 0 fatalities by 2040 and 0 serious injuries by 2045. And those numbers come from that taking action on Regional Vision Zero plan. This year we also updated this, we tweaked this slightly. We set the targets to the latest available data and recalculated how quickly we need to turn the line down to get to 0. And again, that'll make more sense with when I get the graph up here. And then finally, we balance the aspirational goal of 0 with that federal requirement that targets have to be short-term and realistic. So our way of doing that is using our existing data as a starting point, but still aiming for 0. So for example, here we have our people killed in crashes by year. Again, we're aiming to get to 0. So we take our latest available data, which is 2024 is our latest available data. It is 2024. Yes, sorry. I got messed up in my head there. Yeah, it is 2024 is our latest available data. And to get to 0 by 2040, 19 fewer people would have to die on our roadways every single year. So that's becomes our rolling average. So we take the 3 years of observed data, and we have to project 2 years. One is the 2026, because we need to aim to do better in 2026 than we do previously, and one is 2025 because we do not have that data available yet. So we take that 5-year rolling average, and that calculates our target there. So we do the same thing with people seriously injured in crashes by year. We need about 100 people fewer to be seriously injured on our roadways every single year in order to get to 0 by 2045. And you can see this is how we calculated our average with using our existing 3 years past observed data and then 2 years in the future projecting that we will reduce the number of serious injuries on our roadways. And then finally, we have our non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Non-motorized is pedestrians, it's bikes, I believe scooters is part of this as well. And this is sort of a hybrid approach because we, again, the number of serious injuries and fatalities have different target years. So we calculate those both separately and then merge them together into one trend line. So this yearly reduction is 5 fewer deaths and 22 fewer serious injuries, again, to get to our target there. And then all of that adds up into our proposed safety targets. So I showed you the chart for the number of fatalities, serious injuries, and non-motorized, and you can see those targets listed there. And then the rate values, we just divide by 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and we get the rate shown there. So just a quick overview of how we've done on our safety performance measures in the past. We had a little bit of a stretch there where we were achieving a few of our safety performance measures, but for the last few years, we have not been achieving our previous targets. So in light of that, I just wanted to highlight what, new safety work we're doing at the agency. And I'll also note that my colleague will be presenting in the informational section about the new Taking Action on Regional Vision Zero update. So the last time we were here talking about safety performance measures, we said we were going to update the active transportation plan. That has now been complete. We said we are going to continue to host Regional Vision Zero working group meetings. Those groups continue to meet and have productive discussions. We also said we would hire a second senior safety planner, and that senior safety planner is on board and doing good work with the agency. Ongoing and new work that we're looking towards the future with, like I said, we're going to be having that minor update to Taking Action on Regional Vision Zero. DRCOG is working on a Vision Zero Quick Build Toolkit. The Crash Data Consortium also continues to advance that work, currently diving into research on other states' crash data systems to learn how we could get our data faster. And then finally, DRCOG has submitted our SS4A regional grant application, and I believe continues to look for more opportunities in a similar vein. So with that, I'm happy to take questions, but if there are no questions, I do have a recommended motion.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that overview. Any questions for DRCOG? Kristen Schmitz.
I had a quick question, and I know this is always a challenging thing, right? Because data points change a lot. We end up seeing trends that we don't want to see go in the wrong direction sometimes. But if we look at like the chart for the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, and I guess, and this is maybe just more of a long-term question, but if we took the same trend line a year ago, right, in 23, when we saw we had 453, our goal for 25 and 26 would have been like 410, right? Or 400 and some lower number.
Yeah.
Because of what we saw in 24, now we've adjusted those numbers up like 50. And I don't know, I guess that kind of a trend line is just a hard thing to adjust, right? Because again, we're basing it on that 1 year, right? And it just, I know that's how we have to do it, but when we see these things, that when it goes up that much in 1 year, and then it changes because then we don't get back to that same goal we used to have in 25 until what, like 2030 or so, I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? We push that out like, not 1 year, we push it out like 4 years, 5 years to get to the same target. I just have a little hard time with that math, I guess. So maybe kind of how you guys determine to do that, or what maybe long-term we can look at for that trend line. So.
Yeah, I'll let Jacob follow up. I'm sure I'll miss some points, but I guess something I'll note here is that it is a 5-year average, so we do include those old, like the 2022 and 2023 data in our average. You know, it's hard to tell if a data point is just jumping up or not. Yeah, I guess we just wanted to make sure that we're accurately reflecting how hard we actually have to work to get to zero. We don't want to assume that it's just a jot up, a blip that'll come back down. It's better to work harder and err on the side of caution. But Jacob, I'll let you follow that up.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. No, you're absolutely right. I'll make two comments. One is, as you alluded to, this rolling 5-year average is federally prescribed. And I will be honest, I will say this for the record, it is frustrating, right? It is, because if you look at this slide, and the other slides are just like this, of those 5 years that we use in a rolling 5-year average, 3 of them are already accounted for. They're in the past. We can't change them. It is what it is. The 4th year in this case is 2025. This year's almost over. We have, 15 days left? Can't do anything about it. The only year here that we can potentially do something about is the very next year. And it's hard to do something the very next year. And yet, this is how we have to set our rolling 5-year targets. And we do this every year. So we'll be back to you a year from now, having changed the out last year and the out in, first year, right? So that is frustrating, but it is what it is. And I don't want to minimize the importance of this work. I mean, safety targets really do help drive the conversation. They are very important, but that doesn't mean I can't criticize a little bit the federal methodology about how we calculate them. The second thing I'll say is, and I say this somewhat facetiously, but no good deed goes unpunished. A year ago, we were before you having this conversation, and we said, we don't adjust the trend line because, as you can see on this slide and the other slides, year to year, the data jumps up and down, right? And so we have kept the trend line constant and not reacted quite so much to what's happening on a given year basis. And a year ago, you all said, well, now, wait a minute, you need to account for kind of where we're at now and sort of recalibrate based on that. So Carolyn, correct me if I'm wrong, that's actually what we did this year. Having said that, and I say this seriously, Justin, your point is well taken, because this particular year, the data happened to go up, and so we recalibrated to something that was worse, so now it's going to take us longer to get better. And you're right, and I appreciate that comment. It's fair. But again, we made the philosophical decision, well, maybe we should recalibrate to the current set of data, and on this particular one, maybe that disadvantages us a little bit.
And no, I appreciate that, Jake. But I think, like you said, last year, that was the exact conversation, right? Where does that trend line go? How do we adjust it? And I think this was an example of maybe the opposite of that we thought last year. So no solution. I just think as we continue to develop these each year and you bring it back a year from now, I just think it's something to continue to look at. Because those data points are important. We all are working towards them, right? But it also tells a story. So we're trying to figure that balance out. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin, for bringing up that slide. I'd like to tag on, and I have a question about the data, and maybe this is a better question to be directed to the data consortium, in particular for the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. I think a lot of communities in the Front Range and across the communities are dealing with some concerning issues with youth riding motorcycles in our communities, and I am concerned that maybe some of these may be recorded inaccurately as bicycle crashes. And so I know that there's a long way to go we have with education with our communities about this kind of behavior, but also within our, with our first responders and those that are collecting the data, ensuring that we have good data. So would like to hasten the moment that we bring this up with our first responders and make sure that we're accurately collecting data to reflect what's going on out there, so we have the good data to solve the problems. Any questions, comments? Chris Chabon.
Thank you, Chair. Carolyn, this is more of a statement to the team, not to you personally. Could you go back to the slide, please, that showed the check boxes and the X's? Whatever we're doing in this region is not working. Period. Greenhouse gas, when that was passed several years ago, it made us as a group readjust, readapt, and refocus where we're putting our transportation investment. CDOT came in and said we need to make some changes because we cannot meet the rule. DRCOG came in and said we need to make some changes. In my opinion, DRCOG needs to step up now and say, DRCOG board, it's time to pass legitimate policy that says we will or we will not do X, Y, Z, because it's not working. I don't care what the 5-year average is or the 10-year average is, it's not working. And we're still seeing that. Now, we can't sign, design, or build away behavior, right? If people cross in the middle of the street and get hit, you can't do anything about that unless you put them in a tube or put the car over them or something like that, right? But at the same time, are we going to be legitimately talking about safety in this region? Or because if we're doing this route, we're never going to get to zero, or at least not in my lifetime. I've got 30 more rotations, and then I'm done. So maybe you young people can come in and do it, but I can't do it. And so I would like to see us talk about this maybe in the new year. That could be a policy focus in the new year where we do a greenhouse gas-like discussion of policy and then overlay that on the investments that we're making in transportation. Thank you.
Chris, did you want a response? I'm happy to give you one. Okay.
It was more for the record, Judge. But no, I guess my frustration is, I mean, I've been doing this for almost 26 years now. And the term Vision Zero popped out back, about 20 years ago when it first started to bubble up. And a few jurisdictions nationwide are showing marked progress because they're not putting extra lanes on roads. They're fixing operational problems, too many ramps too close together, too many intersections close together. But they're putting pedestrians in leading pedestrian intervals and intersections, no turns on red policies, et cetera, that force the car to be the secondary, change the paradigm. If we're going to focus on transportation in this region, the cars have plenty of room and have plenty of money. Now let's flip the paradigm. And now we talk about sidewalks and transit and bike lanes. And I think, just as a tangential, I agree with Sarah. I think we need to check our data for this consistency, because some of these facts that we're getting from the state, and I'm not pointing CDOT as one person, I'm just saying the state in general, is not giving us an accurate picture of how these crashes, whatever they are recorded. So I guess what I'm voicing a little bit of frustration as a planner, because I want to achieve a Vision Zero in my community, in all of our communities. But in reality, it's not going to be in my lifetime, not given the current trends that we have in terms of the traffic's going faster, people are not paying attention, et cetera. And until we correct that through investment and policy, it's just going to be more of that. 5 years from now, we're going to have the exact same slide up here, except Carolyn will be 5 years older.
Yeah, Chris, thanks. I do want to respond. I do want to say kind of a short thing with the record, which is I mostly agree with you. And we show this on purpose because we want to be transparent. And Chris is absolutely right. This is the data. This is what it is. We're not getting there. We ain't doing it. And I think we're all trying, so this is not like criticize me or you or anyone, but this is the truth. We're not getting there, and we need to keep working at it together as a region. I will say this is more than a DRCOG issue. It's more than a CDOT issue. It's more than a local municipality issue. It's more than a state issue. I mean, nationwide, this pretty much looks like this. The nationwide kind of crash data, and even in the state, has come down a little bit. It's getting a little better the last couple of years, but a little better in air quotes, right? Because it still looks like this. And so there's more that we need to do together as a region. And so I do agree with all that. That's why we're showing this to you transparently. There is more work to be done. We are trying to do our part. I know you all are trying to do your part, but we need to do more together. As we get into 2026, we will be talking about our next transportation improvement program and our next TIP policy. Hint, hint, not trying to drive that conversation, but that is an opportunity to kind of link these dots. But as for today, with setting these short-term targets, yeah, this is where we are. We wanted to show you. We want to be transparent about where we're at and how much more work needs to be done.
Matt Mormon.
One of the things we need to keep in mind, and I don't disagree with what Chris is saying, but if you'll recall, 3 TIP cycles ago, it was capacity only, and you had to justify putting in a sidewalk or a bike lane, et cetera. And now you have to justify not putting it in. And that takes time, I mean, to build those projects and to start seeing those results. So we're making some progress, but it takes time, and we'd love to accelerate that on a lot of these projects. But it's something, as we look at the TIP policy this next time, I think those are things that we need to consider. How do we encourage that even more on our type streets. Something to think about, but just remember that, you know, we're just now starting to see some of those projects actually get built because it takes time to design them and fund them and build them. It's improving, but there's always more improvement to be
done. Questions or comments? I'm sorry, I can't see you over there. I see a hand raised.
Michelle Malinakis, City of Lafayette. I just have a quick question. Is the trend any different for the rate? Is the rate changing any more than the numbers are? Off the top of your head?
No, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I don't believe it's meaningfully different.
Justin.
I'll move to recommend the Regional Transportation Committee adopt the 2026 safety targets for the Metropolitan Planning Organization area.
Thank you, Justin. Second? Mike Whitaker? Mike Whitaker makes a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for the overview, and we'll keep moving forward on safety in our region. That concludes our action items for today. We're moving on to item number 9, which is taking action on Regional Vision Zero. This is a minor update kickoff. This is attachment G in your packet. This will be led by Catherine Rush, Senior Planner, DRCOG.
Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Rush. I'm a Senior Safety Planner at DRCOG, and this presentation is kind of our official kickoff of our minor update that we're initiating for taking action on Regional Vision Zero. So this will be our first presentation on it to this TAC. I was going to set some context first on what the current plan is, what's in it, who uses it, that sort of thing. So the current plan was adopted in 2020, but it actually used 2013 to 2017 crash data. We did do the agency did a strategic update in 2024 that added new action items. Also in 2024, the board adopted those safety targets that Carolyn presented on about getting to zero by 2040. That has not been incorporated in the plan. So what's in the plan? So we have the Regional High Injury Network that identifies streets that account for a disproportionate number of fatal and serious injury crashes in the region. So for the regional HIN, that is the 9% of roads that account for 75% of fatal and serious injury crashes. So that's intended to help identify where we should be targeting our resources and efforts as a region. Then we also have regional crash profiles. I'll be talking a little bit more about what those are in subsequent slides, but basically the factors behind high numbers of fatal and serious injury crashes. We have engineering countermeasures that are specifically targeted to those factors identified in the crash profiles. And then we have action items and an implementation plan that identifies priorities and strategies for different agencies and whether they're high priority, medium priority, that sort of thing. So who uses this plan and why? So we as an agency use it to prioritize corridors for funding and for studies. We look at it as part of, I think, the TIP and RTP. We use it to guide our safety-related work, so strategies that are listed in the Unified Planning Work Program. That includes things like the Quick Build Toolkit that's identified in the plan and then put into the UPWP. It's used by communities that lack their own safety plan to, for example, apply for SS4A funding, hopefully also to guide their safety efforts as well, help them identify where there might be safety issues in their community. It can serve as a template or point of reference for local communities when they're developing or updating their own plans. And then we've also heard from local stakeholders that it can be used to help build further support for improvements on corridors or further support for efforts, programmatic efforts, that sort of thing. So the scope of this minor update, it's called minor because it's intended to be a fairly targeted scope that we are doing in-house. It's primarily aimed at updating the regional HIN and crash profiles with more recent crash data. So for example, making sure that we're identifying those more recent trends like the really high increase in motorcycle fatalities that we've been seeing. Adding high risk networks. So that would identify roads that are at high risk for fatal and serious injury crashes, even if those haven't actually occurred on those roads. It's intended to be a secondary layer that can be used for prioritization, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more. And then also to add missing elements like those that have been flagged in our regional SS4A grants. So talking a little bit more about the regional crash profiles, these again are factors that account for high proportions of fatal and serious injury crashes. We have these broken out by urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas, and interstates. And these are intended to help identify whether we should be focusing on things like sideswipe crashes, for example, or left turn crashes. What are the biggest problem areas for the region that we should really be targeting our countermeasures around? And we're looking to update this with more recent crash data to make sure that we're focusing on the right things. Going back to the discussion about high-risk networks, so here's an example from Massachusetts DOT that identifies corridors that are high risk for lane departure crashes. We would be looking to develop high-risk networks for some of those regional crash profile factors. So for pedestrian crashes, for example, high-risk roadways for pedestrian crashes, or high-risk roadways for XYZ types of crashes. This can help local agencies create systemic projects. So if you have a little bit of money for, in this case, lane departure crashes, you could start implementing those systematically on those roads that have been identified as at high risk. And then add missing elements. So first and foremost, our Vision Zero target of 2040, a description of how progress will be measured. It's sort of implied in the plan, but not explicit. And then a discussion of how projects will be prioritized in the region, and if we're feeling ambitious, any key safety projects that we really want to highlight. So we've already started work on this. One cool effort that was led by our GIS team was they worked with a geography class from UC Denver who compiled a review of what other MPOs have been doing, and they actually created this sliding windows tool for our GIS team to use to help kind of automate this HIN process. Back in October, we held a brainstorming session with the Regional Vision Zero Working Group where we talked about the methodology for the HIN. And we'll be conducting more of those types of workshops as we go forward. And then we have been developing initial draft versions of the regional HIN and crash profiles that we'll be presenting to the working group and to this group in the future. So this schedule highlights that we're intending to get this to public review over the summer, and then hopefully to adoption to these boards and committees in the fall. Before we go for public review and before we adopt, there'll be additional briefings to this group as well as RTC and board. Again, Carolyn touched on some of our related safety work, but we are working on a regional quick build toolkit that will talk about proven safety countermeasures as well as countermeasures that are likely. It'll provide examples of how these have been implemented in the region. It will provide lessons learned on materials to help share those hard-learned lessons that many communities have had, some before and after evaluation templates, and a bunch of other cool things. we are continuing to work on, we'll have one more regional SS4A application this coming year. We have added some new features to the regional crash data dashboard that I would encourage you to check out, a bunch of new filters, and then when you zoom in and click on a crash, a bunch more information about that crash opens up. And then we continue to host crash data consortium meetings where we are doing things like researching other states' crash data systems to see what lessons learned can be incorporated here in Colorado. And here is my contact information if you would like to reach out to me. Otherwise, I will take any questions.
Catherine, for this update, very timely update to the Regional Vision Zero plan. Any questions or comments for DRCOG? Frank Bruno?
Thank you, Catherine. Very good presentation. Kind of similar to what Chris was getting at earlier with the prior item. Prior to this life, I spent many, many, many years in municipal life. And the thing that I keep feeling is missing from Vision Zero is the focus on speed. And I think we're getting at it, trying to get at it through engineering and construction. Constructing, just like one of your last slides there in terms of, you know, the features that we see on streets in my hometown of Boulder and other places to try to reduce speed. But we also see the signs, Vision Zero, 20 miles an hour in neighborhood settings, and yet on my street alone, it's more than it's a suggestion. You know, for the most part, it's not anything that cities can enforce, because the type of enforcement that would be needed to be truly effective to really drive down these numbers, municipalities don't have the budget for this sort of thing. But it's missing from our plan at least acknowledging speed as an element that you can't necessarily just get at it from engineering and construction. And it troubles me, again, in all the elements of my life and municipal life that I've been in, that we have something that we're so focused on and we want to achieve. Obviously, all of us want to achieve this. And Catherine, I'm not picking on you, I'm really not. This is good work. But it's concerning me that we have meetings, we have planning, we have prioritization, but we're missing something. And our prior slide where we looked at, you know, all the red on that slide is indicative of the fact that we're not getting at it. Chris was very eloquent in pointing that out, but I guess I just don't want to see the signs in my neighborhood 20 miles an hour and realize that people are blowing by me at 45 in a quiet little street. And it's something that, again, local government doesn't have the resource to deal with. So what are we going to do? And I'm not asking for a response to that. Just can we reflect that in our planning in some way more effectively? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't feel picked on. I think anybody who works on traffic safety or Vision Zero at any level feels the frustration and wants frustration on so many levels, from resources to why isn't it working, you know, so that's understandable. And we'll see what we can do to incorporate it. We had hoped to do sort of a policy review. I think there is a lot coming out and a lot more focus on these bigger systemic efforts, you know, related to intelligent speed assistance, related to vehicle design. And so, you know, if your city staff aren't plugged into this, they probably are. They probably have ideas of what we could be championing more at the state level, at the federal level. And so we can explore that too, what would make sense at a regional level to champion as well.
Michelle Riccio.
Thanks, Catherine. Appreciate it. For the local jurisdictions that have been working on their own safety action plan, will there be any overlap or consideration, or will you fold in any of that local work?
So at our next Regional Vision Zero Working Group meeting in February, we're going to be hosting it in person here, and we'll be inviting everybody to also bring their own plans, and around that time as well, if they can't make it, to review. We hope to have a couple different versions to see which methodologies seem to result in the most consistency, that seem to best highlight the regional safety issues. We hope to be as consistent as possible while recognizing that I think this is a regional plan, and so it's not going to have everybody's priorities. I think the intent is to really focus on what are the biggest safety issues for the region overall.
Angie Malapietti. I'm sorry, Riviera Malapietti.
That's okay. Catherine, thank you so much for this presentation. And I'm just sitting here, my mind is just going 100 miles an hour. Oh, pardon the pun. First, I want to thank you for including students from UCD, because I think that's where we need to start working, is with our youth, to kind of predetermine what the future is going to look like as future leaders. But secondarily, in my neighborhood, you know, they've put speed bumps all the way down 29th Avenue, and people are not happy with that. But it has really dropped the speed limit over there, because we're just at Mach 10 on 32nd and Zuna, I can tell you that for sure. So I think that we do, as a community, it's not just at the regional and the municipal level, but at a grassroots level, we need to start taking some accountability for this and really looking at what kinds of things we need to activate to make sure that everybody is safe, because it's pretty scary out there to walk. And in my community, it's a huge issue. I hear about it all the time, and quite frankly, walking across the street in my neighborhood is pretty scary. So thank you for doing this work.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, I can't see your name.
Okay, Zeke Lynch, Douglas County. Thank you very much, Catherine, for the presentation and all your great work on this. I want to personally thank you for actually listening to some of the feedback that you've received over the past few years as far as what to incorporate in the plan, and excited to hear that motorcycles are being given a little bit more additional attention. So in Douglas County, we're probably, of all the metro district or metro area municipalities, probably the most apt to get to Vision Zero. We have about 6 to 8 fatalities a year on our unincorporated Douglas County roadways. 40% of those involve motorcycles and high speeds. So a huge focus area for us. And then also just want to say, you know, I look forward to seeing how the high-risk network work gets integrated, because currently we're using people's fatal crashes, serious injury crashes to focus our dollars. A high-risk network will help us look at some of those risky behaviors that might be able to target some of those improvements before somebody has to be killed or injured. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments for Dr. Cog? Michelle Malinakis, I can see your hand this time.
Thank you, Chair Grant. Similar to other folks, I just wanted to thank you all for all of the work that you have doing. I also acknowledge that we haven't moved the needle as far as we would all like, but I love the multi-pronged approach that you all are taking with policy and planning, post-crash care, and to, you know, jump on what Zeke said, you all have done a lot of work to meet the needs of varied governments with rural, urban, all kinds of different characteristics, and really take their feedback in. And I feel like in the past you all have listened and are taking action where you feel there will be the most benefit to start with, and I look forward to this process.
David Kretzinger.
David Kretzinger, City and County of Denver. I wanted to just throw out 2 statistics in support of Catherine, in support of your work and the rest of the team's work. 1 out of every 6 motorists on the road is uninsured. So the fatalities and serious injuries, if we're not paying for it through our transportation infrastructure projects, we're paying for it, all of us, through our healthcare system. Second statistic all throughout is just a comparison of driver's licensing costs. Across the United States, the average cost to get a driver's license or renew one is somewhere between $10 and $90. In Europe, in most countries, it's between $600 and $3,000.
I think there was something on the news this morning about how in France, anything over a very, very tiny vehicle starts to increase their cost for every kilogram added. So it starts to quickly wrap up, and I think it's recognizing the impact of heavy vehicles. So thank you.
I want to extend my appreciation for DRCOG for staying up to date with the Regional Vision Zero plan, keeping it fresh, up to date, the additional working groups and collaborating with partners, and being a technical resource for all the agencies here to move forward on safety in our communities. Any final questions or comments? Thank you, Catherine, and thank you to DRCOG. So the last item on our agenda is an informational item. This is information available in your packet. Fiscal year 2025 annual listing of obligated projects. So feel free to take a look over that in your free time, and that you can reach out to Josh Schwenk, Senior Planner, if you have any questions. Do you have anything to add in regards to that, Jacob?
Yeah, I'll just say 10 words about it. It is a federal requirement that each year, every MPO, including us, provides this kind of listing of projects that have received obligation during this past fiscal year. And so that is literally what this list is.
Jacob? Any other comments or other matters from members of the DRCOG TAC? Seeing none, I just want to say, well, Jacob? Okay.
Interrupt the chair right when she's going to give this beautiful poetic speech. My apologies, Chair Grant. No, not that it really matters, but just be transparent. Please do not clap unless you're glad I'm going away. This is my last meeting as the steward of Transportation Advisory Committee. I've been doing this for many, many years, but given my new role and the timing felt right, given our new chair and vice chair, starting in January, Alvin Badal Sanchez is going to take over this role. So I'm going to sit over here where Ron used to sit, and Alvin's going to sit here and help our new chair run this committee starting next year. But it has been an honor to be able to do this with you all for many years. It's been, frankly, a career highlight at DRCOG to manage this committee. So Alvin will do an even better job, and I appreciate working with you all. Don't clap.
Stole my thunder, Jacob. So thank you so much for thank you for leading the TAC for so many years and being an amazing resource for all of us here and for the chair and the Transportation Advisory Committee. And with that, I'm also pleased to have served for the DRCOG TAC for the last 3 years as chair. I'm honored to have sat here to guide this committee and all the important decisions, and extended my gratitude to Justin Schmitz for stepping in multiple times as vice chair to lead this meeting when I was unavailable. So I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the leadership of both Justin Schmitz and Justin Begley starting next year for the next 2-year term. Thank you. And with that, if you didn't sign in, please be sure you do sign in or find a DRCOG staff person to be sure you are recorded as attending. And the next meeting will be in 2026, January 26th, and we are now adjourned at 3:03 p.m. Thank you.